Reverend Carmen Emerson graced our YouTube channel several times over the past 19 months, and we are delighted to welcome her back to our pulpit live and in person. She is the affiliated community minister for BBUUC, meaning that her ministry as an ordained and fellowship UU minister is centered in the wider community rather than in the parish. Here, she mentors our Healthy Congregation team. She offers leadership development workshops and has led 2 covenant group series examining racism and anti-racism within Unitarian Universalism. She is the staff chaplain at Baptist Hospital in Nassau County in Fernandina Beach, after serving for 2 years as the palliative care chaplain at Baptist Downtown, and for 10 years before that as a parish minister in UU congregations in New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. Reverend Carmen begins her sermon today with a reading she's asked me to present, a poem entitled My Brain and Heart Divorced by Jack Rodell. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I have become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now, my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week, and their notes they send to one another always say the same thing. This is all your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past, and on Wednesday, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying, so lately I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Most nights I sneak out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head. I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you are exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow there either. There is only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There is only breath. And in that breath, you can rest while your heart and head work their relationship out. This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and while my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, she said, "What took you so long?" Reverend Carmen Emerson.
Beautifully done, David. Thank you. I want to take a minute, minister's privilege in this pulpit, and ask us if we could please give whatever way you choose to celebrate, fully masked, a round of applause and gratitude to our worship committee who have worked so hard. It's going to make me cry. For 20 months to continue to connect us through worship services. They've done a phenomenal job. It has been harder work than being here in person on Sunday morning. So to Linda, to David, to I'm not sure all the people on that team. All I know is I'm grateful to you. We are so lucky to have you, and thank you so much. So. It's amazing to be back in the sanctuary this morning, engaged in a live worship service together. The reason we are here this morning, in fact, the reason any of us is anywhere, is because of history. We are our history, said African-American scholar, author, and activist James Baldwin. History is not the past, he said. It is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. We're here together this morning because someone or a group of someones in our respective and collective histories dared to consider questions that begin with, what if, and what if we, and what if I? I like to believe that such what if questions were rooted in love and hope, for as Native American writer Linda Hogan poetically reminds us, we are the result of the love of thousands. And here's her entire verse, powerful and worth sharing. Walking, I am listening to a deeper way, Logan writes. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. We are the result of the love of thousands, and somewhere in our more distant history, a loving someone asked, what if there was a second Unitarian Universalist church in Jacksonville? And then a loving someone else asked, what if we built a sanctuary on Manresa Avenue? What if we make a difference in the lives of others as a UU congregation? And then a lot of loving someones, because churches thrive on a lot of loving someones, asked, what if I trained to be a worship associate or a member of the pastoral care team or learn the tech deck? What if I say yes when asked to serve on the board or volunteer with the children and youth of our church or show up at Pride and iCare or even increase my pledge? What if I join my hopes and fears, my gifts, my skills, and my talents with others who share the values and convictions of Unitarian Universalism? What if I can make a difference in the lives of others as a Unitarian Universalist? Now, in our more recent history, we needed to ask, what if COVID closes the church? And then, what if we try these things, these new things that help us stay connected even when we're not physically together? And what if I do what I can do, whatever that may be, to help our future as a congregation, whatever that may be? So I realize that even if what-if questions are asked in the context of the love of thousands, such questions are not always rooted in hope, but are sometimes rooted in fear. And so we also inevitably ask, what if things don't go back to normal? What if we don't survive as a congregation? What if I lose the faith community I love, the faith community that loves me? Could we sit with that last set of questions for just a moment? Notice what's happening in your head, your heart, and your body as you process that last round of what-if questions. And then, following the wisdom of poet John Rodell that we heard this morning, let us take a fully masked, deep breath together from the now moment offered by our lungs, our wonderful, beautiful, healthy, life-sustaining lungs. Inhale, exhale. And could we take another fully masked deep breath, one of gratitude for all the what-if questions that brought us to the sacred moments we're sharing here and now, all of the what-if questions not yet fully formed, but emerging in faith from that space between our heart's obsession with the fixed past and our mind's focus on the uncertain future. What if we, what if I? It is true that sometimes our what-if questions are rooted in hope, and sometimes our what-if questions are rooted in fear. In my own life, I have learned and continue to learn that when my what-if questions are rooted in fear, I make really bad decisions as my fearful thoughts become a great funnel cloud that sucks me into despair. In that place, caution morphs into suspicion, curiosity morphs into grievous certainty, and especially during times of change, instead of moving through life trusting, faithful, hopeful, my funnel cloud-dwelling lizard brain enjoys dragging me through life threatened and fleeing, incapable of considering any possibilities that do not end in personal and communal disaster. What about you? Do times of change trigger such fears? Do your what-if questions conjure up dreadful answers? Times of change are stressful. And but haven't we been through a stressful time over the last 20 months? Trauma experts refer to the kind of times that we've been living through, these despairing times, as edge states, living in an edge state. Buddhist Joan Halifax describes edge states as places of despair where our very identity is challenged, where our knowledge, our experience, and sometimes even our faith feel like not enough to help us endure our disorientation or navigate our disequilibrium. How many of you feel exhausted? Anyone? Yeah. Sustained disequilibrium is exhausting. In fact, vital exhaustion, described as being bone-tired, soul-tired, heart-tired, is a symptom of living in an edge state. Other symptoms of living in an edge state include compassion fatigue, empathic strain, grief and disenfranchised grief, for example, not being able to do memorial services the way that we've always done them in the past. Edge state symptoms also include burnout as we attempt to meet expectations, our individual expectations, organizational expectations, societal expectations, and then we judge ourselves and others lacking. In an edge state, we frequently experience what's called moral distress, including moral outrage and moral injury. Moral outrage, it's our anger, our disgust at others that results in our shaming and blaming and degrading them. And moral injury is harm done to ourselves when there is a violation of our personal moral principles and we feel shame or a loss of self-respect. So the cumulative effects of vital exhaustion, compassion fatigue, empathic strain, grief and disenfranchised grief, burnout and moral injury, the cumulative effects of these can take root in us, in our actual bodies, as what's called vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma, as human beings, we respond to vicarious trauma because we are, in fact, responding to suffering. And as human beings, we are wired to respond to suffering. It's part of why we feel so tired right now. See if you recognize any of these responses. These are called vicarious trauma responses. See if you recognize any of these in yourself or in someone that you love. And these are described by Tara Lipsky in her book, Trauma Stewardship. So one is feeling helpless and hopeless. I know someone just told me this morning about how helpless they have felt so often. So feeling helpless and hopeless. Feeling that you can never do enough no matter how much you do. A sense of hypervigilance. Think about masking and think about how you feel if you're around people who are not masked. Diminished creativity. Inability to embrace complexity. On this one, think about the whole vaccination conversation, right? Minimizing and numbing. Becoming, as one expert describes it, inoculated to pain and losing your capacity for empathy and compassion. Chronic exhaustion, which we've acknowledged. The inability to listen to the point that you just want to avoid other people. As I've said to some friends in the church, I'm practically feral at this point. So I'm less like, and that's really bad as a chaplain because I'm around people all day and in and out of rooms and wearing N95s. But when I get home, man, I am home. I'm home for good. Home for good at the end of the day. Dissociative moments are also part of this trauma response. A sense of persecution. Guilt, especially about the disparity when we start making comparisons of our lives with other people's lives. Fear, especially a fear of being too vulnerable personally. Anger and cynicism. Anybody here felt angry or cynical? You don't. Thank you for being so honest about it. Addictive behavior. I have watched every possible episode of every possible British murder mystery available streaming. And this is an interesting one. Grandiosity. This is depending on another person's suffering as a way to feel needed, as a way to have purpose. So all of these are responses to vicarious trauma. As you consider your life over the months from the arrival of COVID, through lockdowns, through an election, through contrasting medical information, through vaccinations, non-vaccinations, through surges, as you consider your own life during this intense time period, did you recognize any of those trauma response symptoms? All. Thank you for being so honest right at some point. And that's a great point, Donna, because they also flow into each other. So they're not distinctive, when they can kind of just merge and be together too. Perhaps people you love have also exhibited those. So it's been a hard time. It has been a hard time, and it continues to be hard in many ways. But listen, there is good news too. The good news is that resilience is possible. There are 3 parts to the good news I want to share this morning. I'll call part 1 mindfulness. So much as the lungs and breath are the bridge of now between the heart's obsession with the fixed past and the brain's focus on the uncertain future, so mindfulness is the bridge between vicarious trauma and resilience. What do I mean by mindfulness? So I want to offer you the best meaning that I found, not offered by a theologian, not offered by a spiritual guru, not offered by a religious scholar, but offered by a nurse. Offered by a nurse, Sandra Bernstein. She writes, mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. That's key, non-judgmentally. Mindfulness emphasizing accepting things as they are in the present moment and meeting all experiences with openness, curiosity, and compassion. Openness, curiosity, and compassion. Can you imagine what history we will create and carry with us if, in the wake and midst of the changes we are experiencing over the past 20 months and continue to experience as we create a new normal, can you imagine the history we will create and carry with us if we mindfully ask our what-if questions with openness and curiosity and compassion? Can you imagine the love that we will bequeath becoming part of those loving thousands who risk open, curious, compassionate what if I questions for those we will never even know, but in whose inherent worth and dignity we are nonetheless invested? So part one of our good news is mindfulness. I'll call part two practice and just offer you a few simple practices to help us be mindful and resilient. One mindfulness practice is to create space for inquiry. Nietzsche said that the person who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. And so your creative inquiry could be as simple as asking yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? What intentions are supported by my choices? Another mindfulness practice is to find balance. As the poet Mary Oliver wrote, joy is not meant to be a crumb. Joy is not meant to be a crumb. Yes, there are many serious things happening every day, and even as we do our work, as we understand our work to be, we need to notice beauty. We need to trust joy. We need to practice gratitude every day in small things and in big things. So the mindfulness practice question to ask yourself on this balance is, where am I engaging with life beyond my work? Where am I engaging with life? So the final practice I want you to be aware of is just paying attention to what you are focused on and to remember the internal and external resources available to you as you focus on that which is most important to you. For example, your internal resources are integrity, experience, skill, and knowledge, and your external resources include relationships with others. The mindfulness practice question for this one is, am I remembering my resources? Am I remembering my resources? When you get stuck, when you get overwhelmed, am I remembering my resources? Brings you into a time of mindfulness, which then is a bridge to resilience. So this brings me to part three of our good news, which also brings me full circle to where we started. Here we are together. We have a together to come home to. We have a together to rest with here and now. We have a together to move forward with. In his book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk writes, quote, having a good support network constitutes the single most powerful protection against becoming traumatized. Safety and terror are incompatible. Traumatized human beings recover in the context of relationships with families, with loved ones, with religious communities. The role of these relationships is to provide physical and emotional safety, including safety from feeling shamed, admonished, or judged, and to bolster the courage to tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened. This is so important. I really want to repeat this last line, so please listen with me. The role of relationships is to provide physical and emotional safety, including safety from feeling shamed, admonished, or judged, and to bolster the courage to tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened. No wonder we have missed each other so much. No wonder we've been so ready to return to one another's company. We need each other as we seek resilience to the traumatic life of separation that was required of us to survive a pandemic. We have been surviving. We have missed thriving. As I close this morning, I invite you to consider what it means to you to be mindful as a way to move from surviving to thriving, to navigate from the edge state of trauma to resilience and into a new normal. Do one of those mindful practices that I mentioned speak to you? Being openly curious, asking, why am I doing what I'm doing? What intentions are supported by my choices? Finding balance, trusting joy, and practicing gratitude, asking, where am I engaged with life beyond my work? And focusing on the internal and external resources available to you, including this community of faith, as you make meaning of all that has happened, all that is happening, and all that yet may happen and be. We are our history. We carry it with us. What if, what if it is possible to thrive in new and as yet unimagined ways as Buckman Bridge UU Church? What if we boldly lead in a world that desperately needs the ethics and values of Unitarian Universalism? What if I help make that happen? With love and courage may we ask, and with love and courage may we answer. So be it. Amen. Go now in peace. Go